What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Uptempo Podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Smith, flying solo tonight. Our boy Blake couldn't make it. He's disappointed. He was super fired up for this one, but I think I'll be okay because I got a special guest with me. Yeah, everybody knows him. It's my boy Ike Jones. Ike, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
I am good, man. Glad to be here. Appreciate you guys having me in here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, we saw when you guys subscribed to the podcast, and we just got started a couple months ago. We're up and coming, and it meant the world to us to see that. So, and you guys been showing us some love on Twitter. We really appreciate it. And you guys are doing big things, man. Everyone that follows y'all on Twitter, everyone that watches y'all on YouTube, 10,000 subscribers today. So before we get into talking about the first day of spring practice under brother Hugh Freeze, kind of tell everybody what led you guys, you, Mike G, B, Will, C Dub, what led you guys to start in the War Rapport? And man, did you ever expect it to get this big this quick?
Man, I mean, as far as starting it, man, we all attended Auburn, so we talk Auburn sports anyway, right? So
Right.
it literally was a conversation of me and Mike sitting around talking about how much we talk about Auburn sports and our routine around it, and we're just like, yo, man, we should just turn the camera on. Let's turn the camera on and do what we
Right.
normally do on the phone in front of a camera and see where it goes. And then as far as the expectation for growth, probably not this quickly. Like I knew it had a potential to grow, um, but we started in 2019, so this is 4 years, I guess, technically coming up in October. But the first year we were just kind of figuring it all out. So really, only
Right.
two full seasons, our third full year doing it, and to get to 10K has been great. We still feel like we got a lot of runway left to grow, but it's amazing to see where it's gone so far for sure.
Yeah, I heard you say today there's 90,000 seats in Jordan Hare, so
Yeah.
you know, we got 80,000 at least to go.
Yeah, I mean, and I realize not everybody who follows Auburn is going to like our opinions or like, us and our
Yeah.
personalities or whatever. So I don't know that we'll ever get to. Now, I feel like 100,000 is not uh, an unattainable goal, but it's going to be a push, right? So we got to figure out, where our audience exists and what things we can continue to do to grow. But I think we can make some noise for sure.
Yeah, I think you can, man. And my favorite that y'all do, and you're the main one driving that ship, is to watch the film. I'm a ball
Yeah,
nerd, man. I love to get in there and just kind of break it down, see what it's all. Because the storylines are the storylines, and we'll get into some of them. Like, but
right.
how many times have you been asked about quarterback? Like, we know that question. We know that's what everybody wants to talk about. That kind of deal. Um, I watched the film the other day, and feel like 2 hours in on Ron
Yeah,
Roberts, and you really been putting in the time on that.
yeah,
And we're hearing these terms like havoc, and he wants to cause havoc, and he wants to these creepers and the simulated pressure. Kind of tell everybody just what the base is, what his defense is all about.
yeah. Ron Roberts, definitely. So he runs typically a three-man front, right? And so he's going to vary that front based upon the opponent and how much they run the ball. But essentially, it's going to be a three-man front. So you can call it 3-4, 3-3, 6, whatever you want to do, right? Not 3-3-6. That's not the right math. But anyway, 3-3-5, or whatever, right? Like that doesn't really matter. What happens is it's going to be three down linemen, and then they'll walk up an additional person to the line of scrimmage, typically, maybe even a fifth, right? But what he attempts to do is just show you different things in the front to so you don't know exactly where the pressure is going to be coming from. Rarely rushes more than four, so a lot of simulated pressure coming from that, where zone blitzing and again, like you said, causing havoc, making that quarterback have to think about that offensive line, have to think about five or six guys creeping up into the line of scrimmage area, but which of those guys is actually coming, which of them's going to be dropping off. And then if he does blitz, then it's usually going to be some random corner blitz out of nowhere, right? So he
Right.
does a really good job of just mixing up the fronts and mixing up the looks that the quarterback and the offensive line have to think about.
What does a guy like Dylan Brooks fit into that?
I think Dylan Brooks is going to be your prototypical what they call a jack in this. So it's an outside rush end. So
Yeah.
what he wants to have in that position is somebody who is a good pass rusher, but also somebody who can drop back into into coverage. They have the ability to turn and run with a running back or a tight end, because again, they're going to have that simulated pressure where that jack or that rush end may not be coming on that play. They may be dropping back, but they'll look as if they're going to. You saw actually a lot of that last year with Derek Hall. Derek Hall did a lot of the same things that this jack position is going to be doing this year. So if you think about what Derek Hall was doing some of the times when he dropped back, but he was primarily a pass rusher off of the edge, then you'll really get into the place where Dylan Brooks is going to be this year for this team. And hopefully he's ready for that responsibility. I haven't seen enough snaps from him to know how adept he's going to be specifically in the drop back portion. I think he can be a dynamic pass rusher though.
Yeah, it's been about Derek Hall. Derek Hall has been high on him every chance he gets. He praises Dylan, talks about how he's ready to roll. Do you think that, because the concern is the weight, do you think he's got to put on the weight, or be okay in this system to play? It applies about 232 is what I'm seeing.
I mean, I think it's really, for me, it's not necessarily about weight. It's going to be more so about physicality, because there's undersized guys who do a lot of the same stuff that Dylan Brooks is going to be asked to do. I'd be more concerned about his weight if he was going to be if it was a 4-man front defensive end, where his primary responsibility, even though it is a rush end, is going to be setting the edge in the run game. A lot of what Ron Roberts does as far as his edge stuff is not necessarily the job of the jack to set that edge or that outside rush end. He asks him to crash down a lot more than setting edges. So if he were going to be an edge setting defensive end, I'd worry about that a little bit more. I'm really more concerned about whether or not he uses his hands well and his speed to get around the corner.
Do you think we're going to see, and please tell me yes, do you think we're going to see more rotation at the defensive line? Because it just seems like those guys got wore out, bro. I sat at Jordan-Hare for the Penn State game, and I haven't seen anything like that. I've never seen a team just come in and just run the ball down our throat, and you saw it obviously time and time again throughout the season. And it just little to me, like those guys were worn out, man. Is that something that's going to change? Because we got used to it it was constant. Those guys were switching, they were fresh, and we were throwing bodies at them.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to. I think that ideally for anybody, you want to have the rotations in there for the defensive front. And that's going to be incumbent upon making sure that you've got a solid, in this rotation, 6 to 8, right? You got to have 6 to 8 guys that you're going to be rotating on a consistent basis. I think last year we dealt with some injury stuff, right? So we had some guys that we would have been able to rotate in a little bit more, but because of injuries, we weren't able to. And then there was just an experience or a trust factor that just wasn't there with the coaching staff and some of the younger guys or the less experienced guys that were up there. So hopefully we'll get to a place where not only is the trust there, but the health is going to be there so that we have enough. And then a lot of that is attrition by bodies, right? Like we honestly, in the previous coaching staff, specifically last year, didn't do a great job of getting enough bodies into some of these rooms to make sure that we could deal with injury issues if they popped up. So hopefully we've got enough bodies right now. And then because the bodies exist there and those bodies are experienced, especially what we brought in the transfer portal and guys we had coming back, there's enough trust there to start that rotation to be good.
No doubt. If you're an Auburn fan that ever doubted the importance of recruiting, I think the last 2 or 3 years have kind of shown you, especially on the offensive line. But there are plenty of positions where it just hasn't been what it needs to be. But one position that has been locked up in, it seems like for the last 5, 6, 7 years, is defensive back. And we're keeping Zach Etheridge. We're adding Crime Dog back to the mix, so we know that the recruiting is going to be there. And one of these big recruiting gets, whenever the coaching change happened at LSU, was swinging in and getting out of Valdosta, Georgia, getting JD Rim. And I know obviously, what was it, a couple Saturdays ago or Sundays ago, you and Mike talking about guys that you could kind of expect to make that next step. And our listeners, though, I've been on here, I'm JD Rim fan club. I think that by the end of the season, he's going to be the other starting corner, obviously to DJ James. Kind of talk about JD's game and what you see in it and why you're so high on him as well.
Yeah, I think the change in defenses is going to be beneficial for JD. One of the things that is interesting to think about or note is when we moved over from a Kevin Steele defense to Derek Mason / Jeff Schmedding, because they both ran the same defense in those 2 years under Harsin. There was a lot more press man on the outside, a lot less zone concepts being run in those defenses. under Kevin Steele. Now you got a lot more
Right.
zone when you got into this new administration. I think we're going to see a lot more of a mixed back end coverage in this one, but because typically you're going to have situations where Roberts is going to put his DBs on an island. I think that press situation actually works really well for the physicality that JD brings to the corner position. I think he likes to be physical. He likes to get up and press, and he does a good job the times that I've seen him be able to do that. And it's gonna be, I think, a little bit more fitting for the style of play that JD wants to come in and give. Okay. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he's able to compete for that in the opposite corner from DJ James, because clearly it's going to be DJ James plus somebody else. I just don't know how DJ James goes from being in second team all SEC type of performer to not being the starting corner. I mean, he was good at Oregon, so this isn't like a fluke year for him. He's always been a really good corner, and he's going to continue to do that in this last year he's here at Auburn.
First rounder?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that he's got first round talent. What round guys go in is he'll get a first or second round grade for sure. What round he actually ends up going in is going to be dependent upon a lot of what the stats look like this year. If they're just not throwing in his direction, he doesn't get an opportunity to show that. He might not go in the first round. And then, what happens a lot when you get into the NFL draft is they're going to prioritize pass rushers and quarterbacks in the draft, right? So if we've got a big crop of quarterbacks coming in and a big crop of pass rushers, that's going to push guys like interior defensive linemen, DBs, wide receivers further down in people's draft boards because they're trying to get that. So it just kind of depends on who else is coming out. He definitely has first round talent though. So I'll say that.
Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about not getting, if they're not trying him, he can't showcase it, because I remember Carlton Davis. I'm a big Buccaneers fan, and I just pounded to all my friends like, this is the right team, this is that guy. And they said, well, his stats. I said, it never threw his way.
Right.
They were scared of. So appreciate that, man.
That happens all the time with talented DBs, though. You're just, the more people see don't throw at that guy, the less he's going to get opportunities to get interceptions and pass breakups. But that's why they pay people a lot of money to evaluate film and understand, is this guy doesn't have the stats because he's not good, or doesn't have the stats because he is that good, right?
Yeah, like when Darrelle Revis was making his run, you could just look, and he was facing top receiver after top receiver, and it was one catch, 8 yards, just like every week. It was just like that. It's like, no, we're not even throwing that way. And then you can do whatever you want to do on the whole, with the rest of your defense, because I've got this locked up. And you talked about how having Steele like that man press, kind of easy, isn't it? When you got Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson and those kind of cats on the D line, that I can trust my guys out here to run this man press and it all together. So we're hoping to get back to playing a physical, ferocious Auburn style defense. And I'm excited watching some of your stuff, and that maybe Roberts is able to bring that. One question before we get over to offense, I just kind of thought of, we go back to last year, and I've never seen a college team that just because of the nature of the game, I've never seen a defense struggle to get turnovers the way we did. Do you think that changes? That changes just by law of average for one, but is Ron Roberts' defense going to kind of call us through?
So I think that when you're more aggressive defensively, you tend to get more turnovers happening. So the question is, to answer your question directly, I do think that we're going to get more turnovers next year. It's going to be incumbent upon that defensive line to cause havoc up front, though, because a lot of that is about pressure on the quarterback and pressuring him into making bad throws, tip passes, that sort of thing, and not so much about your DB's ball skills, right? Like, you just want to get a couple of gifts back there that you can have. And then the other portion of that is going to be forcing fumbles. We did a really good job of forcing fumbles the last couple of years, did a terrible job of recovering those, right? Like, it's just, if you looked at the forced fumble rate
with a big
of our
hit.
defense, forced fumble rate was high, but we just didn't recover a lot of them. So that's the thing that we're going to have to work on. Is just more, and those are things that really you coach to, right? Like, that's a thing where it's like, we're going to have drills, loose ball, go after it, right? Like, just getting after that sort of situation is something that some coaches really focus on, because they want to be a havoc creating turnover machine on defense. So I do expect to have more, but the only thing I'll caution Auburn fans on, when you're more aggressive, you also get beat sometimes, right? Because you're going to be trying guys in man pressure, and because you're going to be trying to simulate pressure and blitz and all that sort of thing, you can get caught slipping. So once it happens,
Yeah.
I don't need people pounding the table saying, "Oh, look at this terrible defense." Like that's the give and take of being like you can be aggressive. Because think about this. Georgia is a team that plays that way, right? But when they faced an
Yeah.
offense that could burn them, they got burnt. Ohio State was out there cooking that Georgia defense
Good
because they
point.
had the athletes
Yeah.
to be able to do that sort of thing. So it
Yeah. And
happens.
CJ Stroud is that dude.
Yeah. So it just
Yeah.
depends, right? Like you've got dudes in the SEC that know how to get around. Thankfully,
Mm.
this year there's a lot of inexperience walking into quarterback rooms in the SEC. So maybe you'll have an opportunity to confuse some younger quarterbacks, some less skilled quarterbacks. But you are going to face the likes of, by the time you get to Mississippi State, maybe they've gotten whatever the new offensive system is figured out, and you've got a trigger man who can do something dangerous against that defense. We'll see, right? He's had mixed results against Auburn. First half, Mississippi State, year one against Brian Harsin, he couldn't find a receiver anywhere. Second half, he's roasting them. Last
Well, they
year,
got
it was kind of
cooking.
last year is kind of the exact opposite. He started out really hot, and then the defensive line started getting pressure and all that sort of thing. So we'll see. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens this year, but I do think that we have an opportunity to force more turnovers with this defense because of the nature of how they're going to be putting it together. If those guys figure out that system and they're communicating properly, it's going to be hard for offenses to operate.
Yeah, there was a point where we're like, what, minus 18 in the turnover margin? You're just not gonna.
Ridiculous. I mean, listen, if you're not going to get turnovers, you can't just keep giving the ball to other teams too. Like that's probably the most frustrating part. Is like we're not forcing any, but we're certainly giving the ball to the other folks a lot.
So going over to number one, you got to check the ball, but we look at this wide receiver room, dude, and like I think there's a lot of talent in there. Everyone so excited about Cam Brown. It seems like when Cam opportunities, it seems like when VAR gets his opportunities. I know that you guys have talked a lot about Chick Boston. You got Fair, you got Kelly. Man, there's just a lot of young cats in here that I feel like I hear y'all talk on War Rapport too. Y'all feel like these guys are ready to go. Give
Yeah.
us a reason to be optimistic that we're finally going to see under Hugh Freeze and Philip Montgomery a system that gives these guys the opportunity to show capability, Landon King too, and they're not open finality.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is going to be how quickly this offensive line comes together. Honestly, the wide receiver room. We talk about this a lot on the show. They're probably the guys who have the toughest job, but get criticized a lot because you don't have a lot of control over whether or not the play gets blocked up well, whether or not the quarterback delivers the ball on time and on target to you. It's like your job is to catch the ball when it comes your way. And if it's not a great throw, then you got to figure out, well, if you touch your hands, you got to catch it. Like it's so hard to be out there because you are the end product of a lot of things going right before the ball even gets delivered in your direction. I think, to your point, when our receivers get the opportunity this year, they're going to go out there and they're going to show that they've got talent, and they're more talented than what people have been giving them credit for, because I do believe in the talent of that wide receiver room. The one thing I will say as a knock for our receiver room that I want to see more of is just dynamic playmaking with the ball in their hands. I think that they can run routes, they can catch, they've got speed, all that sort of thing. But you just don't see that guy yet emerge that when he makes a catch for 2 yards, he can turn it into 40, 50, 60 yards just because he's either super elusive or just got that kind of playmaking ability to just, I'm gonna break a tackle type of stuff. It's really, we've had a bunch of possession receivers, honestly, with a little speed. And you just haven't had that dynamic playmaking. You can't let this guy touch the ball receiver at Auburn. So hopefully we'll have a couple of those guys emerge this year. I think, hey, listen, I don't know how much playing time he's going to get this year, but watch out for DeQuavius. I believe, forgive me, DeQuavius, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I think Sorey is going to be nice.
Yes.
He's that kind of receiver where ball in his hands, very dynamic. Once he gets an opportunity to show that, it's a lot of people going to be losing reps when that young man gets out there.
So Soria is from Chipley. I'm here in Pensacola, Florida. So I rode over after he watched him play a couple times, and the first game I went to watch him, it was his second touch screen pass to the house, and
Yeah.
he made the whole defense look silly. So I firsthand, I don't know how much he's going to get on field this year, but you make a good point. That room is so open that
Yeah.
if he makes a couple of plays in spring practice, why not? Now you talk about, and we saw, I think last year, for example, so much has to go right, like you just said. You got to block well. The quarterback has to make the right read and then get the ball there. There's
Right.
so much has to go right just for this to happen. So everyone's big question is quarterback.
Hmm.
It's just a pretty broad question, Ike. But how do you see this whole battle shaking out? Let's just assume that one comes in, just everyone on the roster. No transfer addition. How do you see it out? And what is the difference? How's it going to look? Because we all think TJ is going to go. So at the very least, going to be two. He's going to be getting reps. There's going to be a plan for Holden. How different is it going to look with Robbie versus Holden running the offense?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious difference is going to be the playmaking ability with their legs, right? Like Robbie's just he's a different, regardless of whether or not Holden can run. I don't think it's debatable whether or not Robbie can run better, right? Like it's just not
Yeah,
we're not sitting having a conversation of
yeah,
who's going to be the
right.
better running quarterback. Obviously, Robbie, right? Like so, let's just put that aside and let's just assume Robbie's not going to use his legs, which is a ridiculous assumption, but let's just try to. Um, then it comes down to arm, right? And the ability to make the right decisions. And I think what you would see with a Holden Garner offense is more quick decision making, getting the ball out of my hands quickly, right? Like we're going to throw quick slant passes, we're going to throw quick screens to the outside. We're just going to get the ball out of his hand as quickly as possible because we know he can't run, right? With Robbie, I think you're going to see more. So if you already talked about me watching the film a lot. I looked at the differences between Hugh Freeze offense and a Philip Montgomery offense. You have when you have a dynamic runner, because Philip Montgomery doesn't really have a lot of those. When you have the ability for a quarterback to be a runner, you're going to get more of an RPO that includes a quarterback run in a Hugh Freeze offense. With Philip Montgomery, they're still going to have run pass options, but it's really run with the running back and then a pass tag on the back end. Like they did a lot
Mm,
of things that had the dual call, right? Like it was a run play with a pass tag, right? As opposed
right.
to a true RPO where it's like a triple option almost, where it's
Mm,
running back run, quarterback run, if not throw, right? Like that's a true three option situation in that. With Philip Montgomery, it's more of a two option running back run, get the ball out of your hands, quarterback, not a lot of that middle ground with the QB run. So that's really going to be the difference between the two. Or is there going to be the automatic and also the difference between that is I don't want to get too deep. I don't know how much your audience likes to listen to people go
get
on
deep,
about
baby. Get deep.
yeah
I promise.
about run
That's what I'm
blocking
asking you
schemes.
is about the scheme of it because we
Yeah.
know that like you said, we know that Robbie is the guy with the wheels. I'm more of what's the scheme going to look like with these two guys.
Yeah, what you'll be able to tell is how the line's blocking as to whether or not they're doing that, right?
Mm,
Like if it is
good point. Yeah.
if it's the pass, if it's a run option with a pass tag, then the offensive line's going to be run blocking the entire time, right? Like they're not going to be up doing pass blocking sets. It's going to be
Yeah.
they're running, some sort of zone blocking scheme up front. If you see them run block, then that's just their straight up RPO, and then it's the decision of the quarterback whether or not to give that run or to make a pass based on the numbers on the outside. If they're doing pass blocking sets, then you know that it's really more of a play action type of situation, and they're just using that run handoff to give the appearance of that to the defense. I do think, having said that you're going to see more of the true RPO run blocking with pass tags with Robbie than you are with Holden, just because of the dynamic nature of his legs. I don't think that they're going to put uh, Holden in a situation where they're not giving pass blocking sets to guys because they want to be able to give a little extra time for him to have to be able to scan and make his evaluations, but they are going to want to get the ball out of his hands really quickly. So it's going to be interesting to see what the deep passing game looks like for Auburn as far as
Mm,
called sets. And that's the thing I really don't know because I like Robbie's deep ball accuracy for the most part. I haven't seen This is
Yeah.
factual statement. I've never seen Holden Garner throw a pass over 15 yards other than in warmups. Never seen it. Think about 8A.
Yeah.
The
8A was
touchdown
all,
pass
it
that
was
he
all checked
threw.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bunch of quick. I've never seen Holden throw a deep ball in an actual play scenario, right? Like he might have it in high school. I never seen him do it. So I don't even know what he looks like beyond 15 yards.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing that hopefully we'll see him be able to develop in that way. And that's not saying that he can't do it, right? Like people
Right.
hear
You
me
just
say
have
stuff and
to.
they're like, "Are you trying to say Holden can't?" I say I ain't seen it. That doesn't mean he can't. I've also never seen Holden run. That doesn't mean he can't. Just never seen him do it.
Yeah. Yeah. People, it was after one of these really bad basketball losses recently. I made the comment that this team spends a lot of money now. Basketball is not what it used to be at all. But it's a focus, and we might have to look in the mirror and maybe make some roster changes. And somehow that turned into 15 quote tweets of this guy wants Bruce Pearl fired. So
Yeah.
it's wild out there. When you make a point, people will take it and read what they
Listen,
want to
man,
read, especially on a
it's what
180 character tweet.
yeah, it's what we signed up for, man. I've learned
Yeah,
to
for
not
sure.
get as upset about it because I understand the soundbite or the whatever it is going to be up to the interpretation of whoever heard it, saw it, whatever. And try to stop being so defensive of things because I'm worried about people taking me wrong. Um, I think I speak pretty well, so I don't know how you could take what I'm saying the
Yeah.
incorrect way, but hey, it is what it is.
uh, Real quick, kind of sidebar, because I crack up, man. Do you have a message for the Ole Miss fans out there?
Hmm. Other than being broken ugly, I don't know what else to tell them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
okay, I was about to say, I just listen. It is what it is, man. You guys already know what your status is in life. Don't be mad at me because I told you about it.
Yeah, it cracked me up with that one, buddy. So we're excited about the spring practice, man, and everybody's fired up. I think there's going to be. I'm hoping at 8A pack, dude. I think that this is one of the most optimistic that I've seen everybody. And how can you not be coming off of what we the last 2 years that we came out of? So hope everybody shows up to 8A. Hope everybody packs it out, man. Show this team some love. Before we get out of here, big news. College football is changing every day, dude. Transfer portal, NIL, all this conference realignment. And now we found out that Texas and Oklahoma will be joining. This is the last year they're not going to be in the
Yeah,
SEC. They're going to be joining. And I've heard a bunch of different takes on this and I've heard a lot of people saying that this is going to hurt Auburn. This is going to make it a little bit harder for Auburn. Real quick before I get your thoughts on that, my opinion on it is simple. It depends on how they decide schedule format. And if they do go with the three permanent rivals, it depends on who our rivals are. We know who two are going to be most likely. So if you give us a Mississippi State or an Ole Miss, I've seen Vanderbilt. If that's the third, then I feel okay. If I see the LSU thing that's been floating around, well, then I'm going to go. Well, we'll have to see. To me, it's kind of TBD. We'll see how the schedule falls because it's already one of the toughest schedules in the nation every year. I don't know how it can get much tougher, to be honest. But what are your thoughts on it?
yeah. I mean, literally, how is it going to get harder unless you're telling us we're going to
Right.
have to play Oklahoma and Texas as well, and they're going to take away the cupcake games that we get against, the Mercers and the Akrons of the world. Like, I don't know how Auburn's schedule gets tougher than it is already when every single year 3 of the teams that you play with in conference legitimately have a chance to be national championship caliber teams, and that's Georgia, Alabama, LSU.
Yeah.
Every single year, you don't not play those 3 every year. So you're telling me if we maintain those 3, that our schedule gets harder? It's going to be the same thing. Like, it
Right.
doesn't get
Right.
any
Right. Yeah.
easier. It doesn't
Yeah.
get any harder. It just continues to be hard. And so that's just kind of the lot that you're in life. But what I would say is that I'm hoping that we get to the point where people are saying that about Auburn. It's like, man, we got Auburn on our schedule every year, bro.
Mm.
Like, we got to play Auburn every year. We need to get into the conversation where people are saying that, where they're just like, can we just not play Auburn? Like, give us Vandy, please, but not Auburn, right? And if we're not in that conversation, then we're not building the right kind of football program.
100%. For me, it's simple, man. This team, I've seen this team 2004, 2010, 2013, 2017. You just a goofy thing where you have to play a really good Georgia team again and all that. But I know what Auburn's capable of. Everybody knows what it's capable of. You saw what we did as a fan base versus Texas A&M. Everyone knows what Auburn's capable of. For me, it's about finding the consistency. Let's let the floor be 8-9 wins, and then
Right.
let that ceiling be competing for SEC national championship. So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that we've got the guy. We've seen him win before in the SEC. I'm optimistic about it. He was a guy that I've wanted back before we even hired Harden. So I think it all starts with recruiting. And I say this all the time on our podcast. Hugh Freeze, I think there are guys that know you got to recruit because it's part of the job. I think Hugh likes it, man. I think
Yeah.
that Hugh actually likes to get out, build relationships, and work with people. So I think that the future is bright. Ike, tell everybody how they can find you, man. What y'all got going at the War Rapport? You're interviewing ADs, coaches, players. Y'all busy, man.
Yeah, man. War Rapport. You can find us. You see my @ handle right there, TWR Ike Jones. That's me on Twitter, but we're at the War Rapport on Twitter, Instagram, the War Rapport on Facebook. We're at thewarreport.com. We're out here dropping written content for you guys. We got merch available on the website, so you can check us out there. And we're gonna keep doing our thing on YouTube, of course. So you know, look up the War Rapport there. And we are the Auburn Express on podcast. So if you want to get in the audio format, we got that with some audio only content over there too. So a lot of ways that you can keep up with what we got going on.
All right, awesome, man. Appreciate you being on. Big time get for us, and we'll continue to watch and support you guys. Y'all know y'all can follow us, the Uptempo Podcast, right here on YouTube, Spotify, all that. Follow me on Twitter right there, DMcShot20. And like I said, man, get out here to this 8A game and support this team, War Eagle, and we're out.
War Eagle.